Have you ever lay awake at night with a mind that simply refused to be quiet, turning the same thought over and over like a stone in your hands, until the hours disappeared and the exhaustion became unbearable? Have you ever made a simple decision and then spent days second-guessing it, imagining every possible way it could go wrong, replaying every word you said and every word you should have said, until the original moment felt completely unrecognizable? Have you ever felt like your own mind was your greatest enemy? Not because the world around you was dangerous, but because the world inside your head never once gave you a single moment of genuine peace? If yes, then this story is for you. Once upon a time, in a quiet village surrounded by silver birch trees and a wide, calm lake that mirrored the sky perfectly on still mornings, there lived a young man named Elias, a schoolteacher by profession and a worrier by nature, a man whose intelligence was matched only by the relentless and exhausting activity of his own restless mind. Elias was thoughtful and caring in every way, the kind of man who prepared each lesson 3 times before teaching it, who read every letter he wrote at least 4 times before sending it, and who lay awake most nights rebuilding the conversations of the day and redesigning the decisions of the week with a painful and obsessive attention to every possible detail. He worried about things that had already happened and could not be changed. He worried about things that had not yet happened and might never come. And in the narrow space between those 2 kinds of worry, he moved through his days. Like a man carrying an invisible weight that grew heavier with each new thought, he added to the pile. People around him noticed that he seemed tired in a way that rest did not fix, that his eyes carried a distant and preoccupied look, even in the middle of a conversation, and that he smiled less and less as the months passed, not because life had treated him badly, but because his mind had quietly made a prison out of every good moment by filling it immediately with a new and carefully constructed fear. One gray autumn evening, after spending an entire sleepless night worrying about a lesson he had already taught and could no longer change, Elias walked to the edge of the lake alone and sat on the grass with his knees pulled to his chest, staring at the water and feeling a hollow and desperate tiredness that went far beyond anything he could explain to another person. He watched the surface of the lake for a long time, noticing how perfectly still and clear it was, how it reflected every cloud and every branch above it with a flawless and quiet accuracy. And something about that stillness made the noise inside his own head feel louder and more unbearable by contrast. An old fisherman named Marco sat a few steps away, mending a net with slow and patient hands. And after a long and comfortable silence, he looked over at Elias with calm eyes and said, in a voice as unhurried as the lake itself, "You have been staring at the water for a long time now, and it looks like the water is a great deal more peaceful than whatever is happening behind your eyes." Elias let out a long and heavy breath and told Marco everything. The sleepless nights, the endless replaying, the fear of every outcome, the exhaustion of living not in the present moment, but in 100 imagined futures and regretted pasts, all at the same time. And Marco listened without interrupting, his hands still moving slowly and steadily over the net. When Elias finished, Marco set the net down, picked up a small stone from the ground beside him, and threw it gently into the center of the lake. And both men watched in silence as the ripples spread outward in perfect circles across the previously still and mirror-like surface. "What do you see now?" Marco asked quietly, his eyes still resting on the water. "The reflection is broken," Elias said, watching the ripples disturb the image of the sky above. "Yes," Marco said, nodding slowly. "And tell me, Does throwing more stones into the water fix the reflection or make it worse? Because that is exactly what your mind does. Every single time you add one more thought to a moment that was already disturbing you, you throw another stone, and another, and another, and then you wonder why you cannot see clearly. He turned and looked at Elias with a steady and unhurried gaze. The lake does not fight the ripples. It does not try to flatten them by force or demand that they stop. It simply receives them, allows them to move outward naturally, and then returns to stillness on its own. And your mind already knows how to do exactly the same thing. It is simply waiting for you to stop throwing more stones. Elias looked at the water and felt something shift inside him very quietly. The way a room feels different the moment someone opens a window and lets the outside air move through it gently. He began that same week to practice what Marco's words had planted in him, and the practice was not complex or dramatic in any way. Whenever a thought arrived and he felt the familiar pull to chase it and build on it and turn it into a tower of worry, he simply noticed it the way you notice a cloud passing overhead. Acknowledge it without grabbing it, and let it continue moving past him the way clouds always do when you do not try to hold them. It was difficult at first, and there were nights when the stones still fell, but slowly and with a patience he had never before shown toward himself, the surface of his mind began to settle, not into silence, but into a kind of workable and livable calm that felt more like freedom than anything he had experienced in years. So, my friend, if your mind has been throwing stones the way Elias once did, filling every quiet moment with a new wave of worry before the last one has even finished moving, then carry this one truth with you from today. You do not cure overthinking by thinking harder or longer or more carefully. You cure it by learning to let thoughts arrive and pass without turning every single one of them into a story you must finish. Because peace is not the absence of thought. It is simply the wisdom to know which thoughts deserve your full attention, and which ones are just stones falling into water that would have been still. Let the ripples pass, and trust that the lake always returns to calm. If this story touched your heart, subscribe to Tales with English, where every story helps you learn English and learn life.